recording, and I assume everybody can hear me okay. And Brian, I want to thank you for doing this. Brian has been a friend of the Laguna Beach Republicans for several years now. Spoke at Mozambique for us. He wrote an interesting, if you will, I guess a blog or an email it came out on, which I thought was fantastic. And that was one of the reasons I said, you know what, you need to have Brian come on and speak to the group, because he's got a lot of good thoughts and things to say. And he's running again. And this time, to the extent that we can help in Laguna Beach, I guess maybe there's some people in South Laguna that are part of your district. So we need to walk that portion of it and get those votes out there for you. I know you did well in Orange County, but we'll make sure we can get every vote we can for you. So with that, Brian, I thought I would turn it over to you and let you know that understanding that you're a little under the weather, you go as long as you wish. So, ladies and gentlemen,
thank you. I appreciate it, ML and Jim and the whole group. I'd much rather be with you in person, and let's hope the world normalizes pretty soon and we can be back to collaborating and sharing each other's company in person and getting the work done that we have to get done as a party to begin to incrementally regain common sense and thoughtful leadership in our state and even in our House of Representatives, so that we can start to put some checks and balances back in the system. I do remember that evening. That was a great dinner. I really enjoyed that I guess it's been a couple of years ago now. And so fond memories of the group in Laguna Beach. And I have appreciated your support. We had both donors from Laguna Beach Republicans and also volunteers in our last cycle. And we're very, very grateful for that. Thank you for the mention of my health. I am under the weather pretty meaningfully, and I'll probably try to keep it in about the 30-35 minute range tonight. I would love to answer questions, so I don't intend to short it too much, but I'll touch on a few things. We'll talk about the 2020 campaign season and kind of put a capper on that, if you will, and give you some of my takeaways on that. We can talk a little bit about the overall cycle, the impeachment attempt, and some of the angst that we have as Republicans as part of all of that unfolded, and see what kind of the lessons are for all of us. We can talk a little bit about the recall. I'm not terribly involved in the recall. I know Ann Dunsmore quite well. She did an update, I think, a short time ago. It does appear to me that the signatures are going to materialize. There's a tremendous effort going on between both those groups. And I worry a little bit about the possibility that Newsome survives it. But at the end of the day, it's very, very important, I think, to hold governors responsible and accountable for really egregious leadership. And I think that through my mind's eye, I've never seen a governor so ill-equipped relative to the challenge of that this state presents, this massive state, massive economy, and the challenge of the COVID crisis, if you will. And I've seen just no strong leadership. So if nothing else, the effort to recall and it getting on the ballot should send real strong signals. And then the second piece, of course, is we might just pull it off. So we'll touch on some of those things, and then we can hopefully have some questions to answer and to talk a little bit more free flowing. We did really well in 2020. We scored 47% of the vote. Technically, it was 46.9% of the vote. I have made a deal with the Lord. I'm allowed to round up because 47 just sounds so much better. But we really did flat run out of time. We had amazing momentum down the home stretch. And more so than out of money, we really ran out of time is how we felt. We had a terrific grassroots effort. We had liaisons throughout the district hitting doors. that really functioned almost like candidates unto themselves. That's how we tried to empower them. And it was a remarkable operation. No knock on Diane Harkey, she's a friend and a great conservative, but that cycle in 2018, we lost 13.5%. We lost by 6.1. And we did so with a president, well, we're all fond of him. The district was not. And President Trump lost this district by numbers in the teens. And we were able to overcome that and come very close. And so we're very, very proud of that effort. Thank you again for those of you who were a part, again, as either donors or volunteers. Very grateful. Always felt terrific goodwill coming out of Laguna Beach around the campaign in general. So I appreciate that very much. We won Orange County, very, very big, almost 13%. It was one of the biggest margins in Orange County. We're very proud of that. And we did well in pockets where in precincts south of Pendleton, we obviously didn't win south of Pendleton, but we did well in precincts that are full of sort of bluer collar Democrats, independents. We did very well with a lot of different profiles in certain areas where we were able to have the time. And so we can talk about what's coming in 2022 as well and touch on that a little bit. But we took a lot of great momentum away from 2020, and we really had a fantastic campaign operation. So we will get the message across to more people. The way I have explained it to people is that, you know, we had to flip another 12,000 and change for votes. And the good news is there's probably 60 to 80,000 people in the 49th congressional district that if they took the time to line up the issues and the candidates, or to become open to becoming educated on it, or we had the ability and time to get in front of them, they voted for the wrong candidate. It's that simple when you line up the issues. And so we know the work that lies ahead of us, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. The angst about the 2020 election. So this is really, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from 2020. And I don't speak for everybody on this call, obviously, but speaking for myself, there's an anxiety about whether or not we're losing the ability to have conventional campaigning on an even playing field and do the things that historically we've been able to do to win. And whether it's the integrity or lack of integrity of the press, a concern around the integrity of our electoral processes, both here in California and across the country, that to me has been very unnerving as a takeaway. And I'll tell you a little bit about what took place in San Diego, where they do use the Dominion software that really didn't inspire a lot of confidence in our processes. We saw this trend towards big government. So imagine there were 80 some million people in the country that voted for somebody who's really showing himself to be hardly functional, and somebody who has abandoned everything that he has stood for in his life for a shot at being president. That is, it's very hard for me to imagine somebody making that vote for somebody like that. And it's hard to imagine that his sidekick, Vice President Harris, will not be sworn into the office prior to the 2024 election cycle. I firmly believe she will. What year it happens, I would say the conventional thinking would be in the fourth year. They'll try to give her time as an incumbent. But when you look at him, it's really hard to imagine him holding up to the rigors. So many people voted for massive government at every level of society, and it permeates this $1.9 trillion spending plan, which they stand ready to pass. This spending plan, if you want to get a look at it, go to the House Rules Committee, go to congress.gov, and then go to House Study Committee, and you'll see 3 pages where it's all listed there for you, all the mindless pork that is associated with this $1.9 trillion spending plan, which the bulk of which appears to be geared towards winning goodwill from people and agencies and unions and everybody for life. It's really quite remarkable. And that debt is landing directly on the back of our children and our children's children, period. We won't pay it off, any of us on this call. We'll be lucky if our grandkids ever get it paid off. And it will manifest itself in higher interest rates. We're seeing the bond market move already this week for a couple of different reasons. But in time, this country can only sustain so much debt. And then we will see a run up in interest rates that is inevitable based on supply and demand in the debt market. So what people voted for as policy, to me, is shocking. And that has some anxiety that's come with it. It has been remarkable to watch just how disingenuous the press has been through the 2020 election cycle. Truly remarkable. And I don't just mean the political shows on the CNN and the MSNBC, but I mean the major networks too. And shame on them, because they were given a near monopoly in this country for so many decades and covered this last election cycle with a real agenda. And this is, if you're a Republican, a conservative, or even just a non-Democrat, and in particular a non-socialist Democrat, this has to be really, really disconcerting. This is the hardest thing for us to figure out going forward. And I will circle back to that. Let me talk a little bit about the impeachment attempt. I saw it on the flyer and I do want to touch on it, and then I'll turn my attention to approaching these things in a little bit more optimistic way, okay? So the impeachment attempt, I thought, was remarkable just for the sheer extent to how disingenuous it was. It's very hard to imagine that people in the hard left wing of the Democrat Party and people in power throughout the Democrat power structure were not able to recognize the role that they played in that tragic day on January 6th. Now, keep in mind that hundreds of thousands of people went and protested peacefully and sang and waved flags and had a remarkable day. And then a few hundred knuckleheads, got carried away. And then it sounds like there was maybe a couple of dozen or so that had real sort of evil intent. Okay, and obviously they're criminals and should be dealt with as such. But that day does not happen, I don't believe, if President Trump's term had not begun under siege with their own coup attempt through the Russia controversy that was not a controversy. I mean, it's remarkable that there is no acknowledgement in their role. And this is why I think it would have been the right thing to say, hey, tragic day, it's a shame that it happened, and tried to move on from it and take that first step towards truly uniting and healing as a country. So I thought it was a disgraceful attempt to impeach a former president. And then it was taken up another level by the recognition that they weren't going to get him ousted from office post facto. And so it really was egregious. And we can talk about it in Q&A, but that I found pretty remarkable. So now that I've spoken in a way that's kind of doom and gloom, let me rephrase this or reframe this in a way that's my preference, which is what do we have for challenge and opportunity? Okay. I think really we have three areas as a party that we're just going to have to be energized and passionate and determined around. And there are three areas of opportunity / challenge that are as follows. First is the electoral playing field. So we have to compete in every race, and we have to run to win in every race. This is just something we have to do. Even the races where we look and say, very, very hard to win that race. Darn it, we have to compete in every race, including those. We have to fight and scrap because it's our way of educating people. We have very few ways to educate people and educate voters, especially new voters and coming of age voters. But campaigns are one way we do that. So we have to maintain our enthusiasm and our passion for all our electoral contests. We have to build on our losses. And I'll tell you how we're doing this. But one of the things that always strikes me is when we have a race and we lose it, we just fold up our tents and the whole campaign goes into storage somewhere. And there's no effort to build on the loss, to refine data, to do follow-up calls, thank you calls, inquiry calls about who somebody voted for and why. Whatever operation at its peak we have in campaign offices at the time of a loss, we should maintain going forward. We did that with our Orange County office. We had to give up our Carlsbad office, but we're reopening in Oceanside on about March 15th. So we'll keep you posted on that. But we have to build on our losses. And we are aided in this effort by 10 years now of district certainty. So we will know what all the districts are, be they congressional, assembly, state, senate, et cetera, and what they're going to be for the next decade. So now's our time to commit to that. I'm sure Jessica's doing it in her way with the state party, but we also have to do it locally, where we really commit to building on our losses. The sports analogy I'm fond of using, lifelong Patriots fan, suffered for many years before the years of greatness. But anyhow, I've always said the Buffalo Bills didn't show up every year at training camp and say, well, we're in the Patriots division, we're just going to mail it in this year. They worked on something. They strengthened the offensive line. They worked on the quarterback position. And then when their time came, they were ready. And sure enough, they won the division last year. And they'll probably go to the Super Bowl next year. And that's how, in those areas where we think we're outmanned or the numbers don't line up for us well, we just have to compete and we have to build on our losses. That's something that's within our control to do. And we have to be more determined to do that. When it comes to election integrity, still in the category of the electoral playing field, we have to fund legal warriors and persist on matters of election integrity. I'm very disheartened by what I see as an unwillingness throughout the country and throughout California to approach the privilege of voting, the right to vote, without the honor and respect that it deserves with regard to election integrity. Okay, and it's very unsettling. But I don't think we should federalize elections. I worry terribly about consolidating power at the federal level. So here we can only do what we can do, which is within our county and within our party. You know, we have to keep working and fighting for election integrity. There are great people out there fighting those battles in the court system. Obviously, we all know Harmeet and there's others. We have to fund those endeavors. We have to help with volunteer effort wherever we can with those endeavors. And we have to be determined to do everything we can. Now, it's hard in California. And we have a new Secretary of State, which I don't think will help the equation at all. I think she'll be worse than the last guy, frankly, in terms of her willingness to look under the hood or allow anybody to look under the hood. But we just have to remain persistent and determined and assume every year that we're fighting on a fair playing field, even where we know, at least around the margins, we're not. And we just can't give up on that effort. So you know, we can get into a health club with a fingerprint. We audit companies every year. We audit small businesses, but we don't audit elections. It's really, truly remarkable. We're running 21st century elections with 19th century processes and technology, and it's really shameful. The second area where I think we can focus and have opportunity is in educating and influencing up and coming and new voters. And I think this is very, very important. There aren't a million ways to do this, but we have to support new education models. We have to support charter schools in the face of fierce resistance from this governor. We have to stand up to teachers unions and support the groups that are doing that. We have some people that are very, very committed to the cause. They're solo champions all over the state. We have to get behind them, make them feel empowered, make them feel like they have the might of an army behind them. It's been remarkable to see in the last few weeks some inquiries come about for land and office space for different kind of education models. Parents are very, very frustrated, and if there's one silver lining to this challenge of COVID and the kids in school is that we might open the ears of parents a little bit to some alternative education models that take their kids out of the conventional public schools, which I think are not only failing them in many cases throughout the state in a purely academic sense, but obviously are pounding a lot of cultural nonsense at them and seem to be more focused on brainwashing than educating. And lastly, we need to support groups that empower kids. That's, kids, if they're empowered and determined about how they handle their career and what they want to be when they grow up, I think they'll be smarter about government and they'll be more wary of socialist ideas because they want to dream big. And we have to think about ways to reinforce that message. Campaigns give us one opportunity to do that. But I think we have to think about some other ways as well. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm doing myself in a moment. The third area that we have to figure out a way to have some impact, and this is probably the biggest challenge, but it's also the one that I personally feel most powerless by. Okay, and that's the press and the media. As conservatives, we've lost the press and the media in this country. We have lost the conventional press. We've lost the ABCs and CBSs of the world. Obviously, the CNNs and MSNBCs and them, they're not truly press. They just still maintain that reputation. They're just, provocateurs and really just political entertainment, if you will. But on the whole, the newspapers that people are reading, the newspapers, the New York Times, which gets picked up and just, and reprinted under the AP label in different parts of the country. The influence, it's tremendous. And this is a big, big challenge because we need big pocketed people to help with this. We need our Jeff Bezos, if you will. And it's really hard to know how to impact this. So I can't dwell on it much tonight because I don't have a lot of great answers. It's very refreshing to see Epoch Times. I get an email from them about every 9 minutes. And it's remarkable because some of the emails you get are very straightforward news that you would look at and think if in a blind test, you would think it's benefiting Democrats. And it just happens to be news that does benefit Democrats. My point is, they are a news outlet that is willing to highlight what's going on and the jeopardy to our fundamental principles in this country without being obnoxiously one-sided that will hurt them in trying to catch on. So I see them as a possibility to catch on to broader distribution, Newsmax perhaps, and others. But we're going to have to catch up at light speeds or we're going to lose a whole generation to influence by today's media. So that's the third area. And again, I feel rather powerless in that area. Let me tell you quickly what we're doing, Team Maryott and myself, in two of those three categories. And then I'd love to hear from you if there's interest. So first of all, in the area of educating and empowering children, Michelle and I are funding a modest nonprofit. I'm a 25-year certified financial planner, advisor, and years in management, worked with families, business owners. So we want to take that financial planning and guidance out into lower income and higher need areas that the industry does not tackle. And obviously that's not a political endeavor, but ultimately if kids and parents, and often single parents in low income areas, really struggle, and then there's nobody providing them guidance. And we're very excited. It's called Plan It Kids. It's PLANIT Kids. And we'll have an office in Oceanside in the next 2-3 weeks opening. So I'm very excited about that. And I do hope, in a political sense, I do hope that over the years, as kids are more aware about their dreams and how to plan for them and how their parents can help plan for them, they'll simply be smarter voters. Which way they go with that, I won't speculate, but I think we can all agree that if our young people are smarter voters with a greater understanding of government and the limitations of government, it will be helpful to the broader equation. So I'm very excited about that. And then we are most certainly running again. We kept some of our structure in place, some of our talent in place. We have never stopped working since election day. So I have said time and again, we have to build on our losses. That's exactly what we're doing. We've been making calls by the thousands. We've been refining our database. We have been targeting cell phone numbers. There's really only two things that the press and high tech and others can't take away from us. And that's the ability to reach somebody on their cell phone and the ability to reach somebody at their front door. And, you know, let's God forbid the day ever changes where they find a way to take that away. So we've been working since election day. We're working very, very ambitiously. We're going to close the gap. We are just full steam ahead right now, and we are not worrying about redistricting. I think people are going to be surprised how little the congressional districts change. So we're just full speed ahead, and we believe we'll be able to get in front of a lot of people that we weren't able to get in. COVID took about 100+ days out of our grassroots effort, just took it right out of the picture like a body blow. And I'm not complaining because every candidate dealt with it, but it was tough for us. And now we'll have a full campaign election cycle, and we believe we'll get it done this coming cycle. We have never stopped fundraising. We have never stopped working, and I look forward to talking with more of you about our race if you're interested in helping. And obviously, there's a lot of races to work on, not the least of which is the recall Newsome race as well. That will come down to whether or not we can create a compelling candidacy for somebody that will have as much to do as whether he gets recalled or not on the front end of the vote. So a lot to do. I'm excited to work with all of you. I'm excited to see you again in person. And with that, I'd love to hear questions or hear what's on your minds.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
This is Steve Mann. Many of you know Brian through politics. I worked side by side with Brian for many years, and he was incredibly hardworking, loyal, smart, fun. I really enjoyed working with him, and I'm honored to call him a friend. So I saw the advertisement in the Laguna Beach paper. My wife and I have recently moved from Pasadena to Laguna Beach, so we're now in district. But I just wanted to say that Brian is everything you guys think he is. He's an incredible guy. Really enjoyed working with him, and I'm a big fan. One just side note, and this is totally unsolicited, but as you guys are thinking through, and I'm Republican, but as you guys are thinking through how do we win back some seats and how do we take back the press and all the things that you're talking about, which are all great things, I guess my ask would be try not to be too polarized, try not to be too far to the end where other people just tune you out. There's got to be some dialogue where we can come together, but we still stay strong with our Republican ideals. So that's easy for me to say, harder to actually do, but try not to get too far entrenched in the far right, because I think you'll turn off the kids you're trying to educate. But anyway, Brian, you did a great job as always. It's good to see you, pal.
Likewise. Boy, what a treat. It's terrific to hear your voice, Steve. And I remember that you were heading down this way, splitting time for a while, and then heading down this way. So a real treat for me. Thank you for the kind words and sentiments. We'll have to catch up in person. It'd be fun to see you both. And it's a great point you make, because young people are idealistic and they believe that government can do great things. And the fear of a consolidation of power at any level doesn't really dawn on them too much as too threatening. They simply feel like they want to do great things. They want to vote for people who are going to do great things. And if you start a dialogue with them from a very partisan place, it is hard to break through. And we experienced that at a lot of front doors as well last year. So it's a great point that you make, Steve, and also terrific to hear your voice.
Thank you, Steve. Questions? Well, I guess I have a question when it comes to speaking to people and trying to appeal to them. Has anyone actually done any research on what works, what doesn't work? I know we all think that if you go too far crazy, no one's going to listen to you, which of course makes sense.
Yeah.
What kinds of things possibly work? Well, one of the great difficulties in life is getting someone to change their mind. And I'm wondering if there's any research that says when you have a political discussion, how do you do that? I don't know that there is.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of as conservatives is the need, and by the way, Albert Brooks wrote a great book about this called The Conservative Heart. And so the way I would explain it is this: Democrats have a tendency to start political conversations around issues with people in a very emotional place and stay in a very emotional place with them. As conservatives, as Republicans, we sometimes have a tendency to start a conversation about politics in a very businesslike way. And then we stay in a very businesslike place with them through the end of the conversation. And the mistake we make when we do that is we don't acknowledge their emotions on the front end. And you can pick any issue, but whatever the issue is, you don't get anywhere unless you acknowledge that people have a fear of this or a concern of this that is legitimate. To them, it's legitimate. Scientifically, it may or may not be. Statistically, it may or may not be. But to them, it's legitimate. And so I think you have to, if you can help people understand that you're sort of putting themselves in their shoes a little bit with the issue, and that you understand where they're coming from, and then give them some things to consider, you can get there. We found this out with healthcare. I'm somebody who wants everybody in the country to ultimately be able to access healthcare, to do so without bankrupting their family. Yes, I feel that most should be able to take some responsibility in that whole equation, but ultimately we don't want people to be denied healthcare. But I certainly don't want them to fall victim to Mike Levin's healthcare plan, which eliminates private insurance and puts everybody in a government-run system and dissolves the entire private healthcare industry. So we would go to front doors, and our people were empowered to have this conversation. They were very good at it, and they acknowledged people's emotions around healthcare. A lot of people, if they've lived some life, know somebody who's been decimated by a healthcare situation, or they know somebody who has been maybe unable to access care in a timely way. Pardon me. So you have to start from a place of mutual understanding. Hey, you and I feel the same way. We want everybody covered. We just want to go out about it a little different way, and in a way that will benefit everybody. And that's not government running it. And we were very, very successful having that conversation with people and helping people understand the distinction around the two parties' different approach to healthcare. I like to call myself a bleeding heart conservative because, frankly, I want the best for everybody, but I want it in as many cases as possible. I want it to come from within. I want people to be inspired, particularly young people. We want them to be inspired. We don't want them to feel like they're going to have to count on the government. We're going to be there for them. If somebody's non-able-bodied or broken mind, whatever the case, we're a benevolent people. We're going to be there for them. But we want people really we want the best to come out of them. We want them to be challenged. We want them to be ambitious and live a great life, And so I don't think where we want people to end up or where we want the issues to end up is all that different as parties, but the path to get there is quite different. And the biggest obstacle you have to making the case is time with people, particularly in a congressional race. It's, you're trying to impact 400,000 people. So how do you get that much time with enough people to impact them when we're talking about just the electoral process? So without question, we have to be thoughtful in how we message it. It's really remarkable. I'm going to be distracted here for 1 minute. I'm going to get a copy of this book because it's a truly remarkable book. So bear with me 1 second and then we'll wrap up, I guess. So this is, I'm now sequestered while I wait COVID test results. But so I may get through this, but this is called The Righteous Mind. And it's a phenomenal book written by Jonathan Haidt. And it says why good people are divided by politics and religion. And the crux of it is that, people have their politics and religion and somebody else has their politics and religion, and they feel passionate about it. And then they just kind of stuff the facts in around it. It's a lot more complex than that, beautifully written, but it does help you understand why you have to acknowledge people's passion about issues and why they feel the way they feel. The only thing I can tell you that is a little bit of a deviation from that when we think that people will be reasonable is last year I did run into a great deal, a tremendous number of hard left people that were actually rather nasty and mean about it and rather intolerant about it. And for whatever reason, I see that more as being a little bit more prevalent right now on the hard left. I guess one could argue that Trump factored into that or their emotions around Trump, but that was kind of an interesting twist. Are we wrapped?
Oh,
Go ahead.
No, I love what you said about kind of the difference between the heart and the head, and that we have to acknowledge both. And for me, it's tough when you have all the facts, and because somebody's heart isn't there, they don't listen to it. But it's really important to take it all into consideration.
Yeah. There are people that will put the wall up, and I think the wall was a little extra sensitive and quick to go up in the last cycle. And I'm a big fan of a lot of the policy wins of our former president. But he was a lot of bull in the china shop, and then there were people who just couldn't get past him in the issues discussions. They just couldn't get past the man himself, and it is what it is.
I'm also impressed that you're really looking at how to draw in young people. And it's an interesting question.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if your first name, I'm sorry, it's a familiar voice.
I'm sorry. I'm Dee.
Hi, Dee.
I'm Dee.
Yeah, I think we've met, Dee. So so if you watched our campaign last year, we had a tremendous amount of youth involved in our campaign. If you look at the pictures, and I'm sure someone's still out there on Facebook and on the website and whatnot, and then you looked at Mike's pictures with various volunteers and stuff, people would have just thought in the stereotypical way that the pictures would have been flipped. We had so much youthful energy in our race. We had all our liaisons were 20-somethings who had completed college and weren't finding work in their field and found their way into politics. I warned them, by the way, and many have now chosen careers in politics. But so we had tremendous youthful energy. And again, I think if they take the time to listen to the issues a little bit, think about what they want in their life, and then figure out how to make Republican policy, if you will, compatible with their hopes and dreams and what they also think government should do for people, particularly people in need through no fault of their own. It's really quite inspiring. They just have to be open to it and be around it. And we had at one time or another probably in the neighborhood of 120 to 150 high school, college age, and 20-somethings involved in our race on a very, very regular basis. So
it's impressive.
We were really thrilled about that, and we're building on that as well. We have an intern team that is still at it in Orange County, and again, we're opening in Oceanside, right on PCH, by the way, right downtown. We're going to land right in the middle of downtown and very visible presence, both with the nonprofit and the 2022 campaign. So I think you'll see our campaign continue to draw and inspire young people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
Jim, you got to unmute
Yep.
yourself.
Yep. Brian, I was curious if you have heard anything about what may happen with the redistricting and what may change about the district that you're running in.
No, and we're not going to hear anything till at least December. And our view of it is we're working on the major population centers, all the data refinement, all the voter follow-up, and then anything that the district doesn't retain, we'll simply share with the Republican in whatever district that becomes. So that's part of the building on our losses thing and the notion that we have 10 years now once the district lines are settled. I could see it moving farther north. I could see it moving farther south. But there's only one way we won't run, and if that's has me, squaring off with a Republican and with an incumbent Republican. So we're running, and we'll see where that lands. If it pushes way south and it looks like a suicide mission, in fairness to family and team, we'd have the conversation about whether it makes sense. But again, I think campaigns are an opportunity to educate people, to excite people. We have to take advantage of that in every district. It's what I retired to do. So Steve and I probably both miss our former company, but and I miss the industry, but this is what I retired to do. And so we're full speed ahead. And once again, all the work we're doing, if there's a piece of it that, won't be relevant to us in the run because of redistricting, we'll move all that data over to a Republican who can make great use of it and build on that for the future.
I wish you the best either way.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim.
Anybody else have any questions? I have one more, but well, my question really revolves around I think in some places they're called opportunity scholarships, and different cities around the country have people that are donating to a cause that provides scholarship money, if you will, to people in middle school so they can go to a better high school. And I'll tell you a little bit of a personal experience about this that was a failure. When I was at Yum Brands, I asked a couple of my friends, both liberals, if we could put a fund together and then eventually get more people in it who would take kids and take them out of some of the public schools in Louisville were terrible, and try and get them into some of the private schools, mostly Catholic, not because I'm a Catholic, but because they were great schools, but there were others as well. My failure was eventually neither one of them was willing to actually do anything. They didn't see it as something that was important to them. Maybe it was expensive, maybe whatever it was. So my question is, are there groups around like that that are opportunity scholarship focused so that you can actually impact the lives of some young kids?
Yeah.
Better, because the school systems, Diaz, of course, is on the school board here in Laguna Beach, but the school systems are really doing some really strange things now, both culturally and lack of academic focus. And that will not serve kids well, especially will not serve underprivileged kids well.
Yep.
I was wondering if is there anything out there like that we could gather around and make it a cause. It doesn't have to be a Republican cause, probably shouldn't be a Republican cause, but make it a cause, because if we don't help these underprivileged kids who are going to be stuck in these schools, they're going to grow up voting Democrat because that's all they know. And they're thinking in terms of, well, my parents voted Democrat and they said you had to vote Democrat or for whatever reason, but they don't get any other kind of information that would help them make a different determination.
Yeah.
I think a better education like you, I think that would do it. Are there any groups out there today that are already set up structurally that we could donate to, or we could try and volunteer with?
Yeah, so the scholarships idea for middle school, I hadn't heard before. I'm not aware if there are or are not. I do, what I have sensed, and very concretely, is almost a little mini explosion in ideas and requests and initiatives around new education models and starting to give kids choice. Because if you watch Newsome, what he did the first round with a couple of bills there on the charters, and then they tabled a couple of the more obnoxious ones that pretty much just about did away with them, but those could come back to life. This is not somebody that is going to, favor charter schools and new charters anytime soon. So I think, but I think it's going to be hard to hold back others, people with means, people who are concerned about our education processes now. And again, I think COVID and the way they have really hurt kids and the kids who can least afford it, and really all but forced single parents, and 90% of the time those are moms, effectively forced them onto welfare by eliminating their routine and their care situation where their kids were on a campus learning. It's really quite remarkable. I mean, you'd almost swear they were targeting certain profiles. It's shocking, but there's a real resilience now, and I'm aware of several campus ideas that are looking for space and different ideas coming about. Maybe a little bit of the online learning will offer some opportunities to enhance those new ideas. Scholarship fund is interesting. I would bet there's something out there like that. Why don't we agree to circle back on that? I'll see what I can learn with some folks that I know that are pretty immersed in the education stuff, and we'll see what we might be able to circulate out that you can share with the Laguna Beach Republicans. That's might provide some opportunity with that.
We'll do that.
That was a great question. I know in San Juan, which is your area,
Yep.
They did provide some help for Latina young women to go to St. Margaret's during the summer, and then possibly maybe go during the year. And I was impressed. I met with a couple of those young girls that one of the things they did that was really smart was they didn't just choose one or two. They had a group because the girls wouldn't feel comfortable by themselves. Yeah. And so if there was a group of them, they wanted to go, they felt good about it. So there are some things out there.
Yeah, actually, Dee, thank you for the reminder. That's Breakthrough San Juan. It's a wonderful program.
Yeah,
it's absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure how their endowment, for lack of a better word, at the moment is funded, or what their process is. But I've known some of them over the years. They are wonderful. And I'm sure there's a lot of similar groups. So that's something we could probably, coalesce in some data points and get some other ones listed on there and put out there for people to consider and so forth. Mm-hmm. But, one thing for us to keep in mind is it's private isn't necessarily going to be the end all either. I think it's a focus on education for the sake of education. And then kids are given the freedom and flexibility to develop their politics and their thoughts on life, from their own wellspring of ideas. In the campaign, I used to do what I called the Bernie Bro Challenge. And so I would talk to any young kid who claimed to be a Bernie bro, and I would ask them, what's taking them in that direction. And I swear, Dee, 4 times out of 5, the next words out of their mouth were, "Well, my professor." And then it went from there. And it's too bad, because we should let kids kind of discover their thoughts about things, especially the more complex issues. Where I worry about the school systems a little bit, even the private schools, is this idea of privilege and victimization and sort of this very, very heavy-handed. To me, that's a little bit tricky and isn't particularly healthy. And but we can definitely see what's out there, and you're obviously you see what's coming about on the new charter side and so forth. And So you and I have to stay connected as well. And my hope is that one of those key 3 areas, education, and helping young people sort of expand their horizons a little bit, and in time maybe make them smarter and better informed voters. Let's hope some good things come about that will spark a trend.
I hope so too.
Any other questions, or we can let Brian try and recover here?
It's always a pleasure to be on. Like I said, I look forward to seeing you all in person again very soon. Whether it's that terrific dinner spot or another place, any excuse to get to Laguna Beach, and we'll take all your passion and any volunteer spirit and donations towards our 2022 cycle. And watch for, we've done a kind of a soft announcement in the Orange County Register and a couple little press. We just, as we gear up, we will have a more public announcement, and we'll keep you all informed. And like I said, I know in the last cycle, I felt a lot of goodwill coming out of Laguna Beach and in the chat wire and so forth. And so I appreciate that. You folks are special to me, and I'm grateful. And I wish you good evening.
Good evening and thank you.
You
Can I
too.
ask the folks who are
Thank you.
on the call to stick around for about a minute?
Thank you,
very much,
Brian.
Brian.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Brian. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, so I've asked you to stick around for about a minute. As you may have noticed on the website, we need some volunteers to fill some positions. You've got 2 of the people that do their best to keep us afloat as the Laguna Beach Republicans, Jim Kennedy here, Righty Jim, and myself. And we are in need of some people to help us. Specifically, it would be good to have a vice president, and it would be excellent to have a secretary. It would be excellent to have a treasurer. And right now, a lot of those roles, the treasurer side, fall to me, and I don't think it should be all in one person. It's always usually a bad idea. So we need a vice president. Jim has been nice enough to say he would stick on as our communications director and does an excellent job with that. But we do need some volunteers, and even if you don't feel like you can volunteer to do this, maybe you can talk it up among some people that might find the time. Most of these things don't take a lot of time, but it would sure be nice to have more than 1 or 2 people trying to put these meetings on, and also to take care of some of the blocking and tackling that goes into being the treasurer and the secretary. So I would, if anybody wants to raise their hand tonight, I'll certainly take note of that and thank you. But I would ask that you try and get back to me, if not that with either volunteering or by someone you've convinced to volunteer. I know I see a lot of folks smiling out there. I think that's because you're contemplating actually volunteering. So that would be great. Any rate, I think this was a great night with Brian under the weather, but he may have been under the weather, but I thought he did a great job, and so we're fortunate to have him. And I would, unless there's some other business anybody would like to discuss, I can close the meeting out.
I was just going to say, if they want to reach out to us, Laguna Beach GOP at gmail.com, they can email us if they have anybody or if they decide to volunteer.
That would be great. Volunteering is good. And then we will have an election because we formally need to do that. And it'll be a email election probably. And then we'll proceed and try and, what's really interesting is that we have about 130 members in this group. And then what we find is, and I won't go on and on, when we actually record these things and put them out there, as I mentioned earlier when we started out, I don't know if we were all on the call at that point, we've had as many as 56 people download and watch the program, watch what went on, anywhere from 30 to 50. So there are people out there that they're involved. They like to see what we're doing, and I'm really just asking for more help. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So if anybody would like to say anything other than that, or otherwise I will, I'll close the meeting. Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All righty. I'm gonna end it
Bye.
out. Bye.